So Adam, your stable's exceptionally busy at the moment. You've got some big dates coming up, but you've also achieved a lot. You're seen as one of the go-to trainers in the country. Did you think that you would get this kind of success when you started out as a trainer?
Pretty much most of my life hasn't had any forethought in it. I'm quite instinctive, emotional and reactionary, so no is the answer. I never thought I'd be where I am. Don't know, I never...
Was it a dream, was it an ambition?
No, if you said to me, what, 25 years ago, you're going to be a coach, manager, promoter and do this, I would have probably gone, but here I am.
What do you get most satisfaction from? Promoting a high-level event, managing a fighter, or training?
Coaching.
Why? What box does it tick that the other?
There's so much involved in coaching. Anyone can promote, really. If you're shameless and you don't mind chatting, anyone can promote. And management isn't difficult either. It's just about having the contacts and a bit of know-how to match make. But the art of coaching for me is a real art, because it's not just about teaching technique. You're a psychologist, a psychiatrist. I've studied anatomy and physiology. I used to teach sports massage, injury rehabilitation, so I bring all of that into it. And it's an element that I can indulge a lot of things that I'm fascinated by, that complements I think complements my love of the sport.
So it doesn't sound like a great coach is something that you see for 5 seconds on Instagram doing fast pads.
For me, there's coaches and there's trainers, and you know, people want to see jazzy bits of pad work because it's eye candy for sort of casual boxing fans. But the jazzy pad work really has got nothing to do with what makes a good fighter. It's just a break from the monotony of training properly.
What does make a good trainer? I mean, how in tune do you need to be with your fighter? What role do you have to have to achieve their respect? Do you have to be a father figure?
I've got to be really presumptuous to answer that question, because for me to say what makes a good coach is kind of me saying I'm a good coach, and I don't know what makes a good coach. I genuinely don't know. I just do what I believe is right. Like I said, there's no forethought here. It's I'm off the fly type of instinctive, reading situations, trying to perceive. Your perceptions are everything, I think, as a coach, as well as your knowledge. Because you can deliver the same message to 2 different people, and those teaching methods get absorbed in completely different ways. So for me, the art of coaching is to get your point across where it's understood, using as few words as possible.
Do you feel that the more experienced you've become in the game, your role has changed with your fighters? Do you think you're maybe less pally, a more father figure now time has got on?
Because it's got nothing to do with my age, is it? It's all about my.
I would have said, well, I didn't want to go on to your age because I know how sensitive you are about it. But no, in terms of, I mean, I suppose because you're older, do you feel that the dynamics changed in the gym from where you would have had fighters of similar age to you to now fighters that are probably young enough to be your children?
Yes. Yes.
I know it's hard for you to hear.
Yes, you finished that question before I was about to start. I think, naturally.
I know
I'm
you're
always
still young at heart.
I think because I'm always questioning what I do, I'm always questioning if what I'm teaching or what I am understanding is right. I think that keeps me young and enthusiastic in terms of my mindset towards the coaching, because I never take for granted what worked there is going to work here. I'm always second guessing and questioning myself. And because I do that, I demand that sort of critical analysis of my fighters, and they've got to be able to accept it and understand it. And with the fellas I've got now, there seems to be a really, really healthy and fun, respectful balance of everything.
Are you improving as a coach? And how can you improve as a coach?
I don't always question what I'm doing, always questioning. There's no off switch. I might be sitting down watching TV or buying something online, but my mind is always drifting to, why isn't he set on his left knee when he throws the left hook? My mind always drifts to some form of technical content or analysis or understanding of a fight that I've seen hundreds of times, or a fight I'm working with. And that's just, I'm quite obsessive. I've got an obsessive nature, and being a coach for talented, intelligent fighters gives me an outlet, a healthy outlet for that obsession.
Do you love the sport?
Love the sport, hate the business.
Let's talk about the sport side first.
Only talk about the sport side.
Why do you love the sport?
I don't know. My stepdad dragged me out of bed when I was 11 years old on a Tuesday night. It was a school night, and gave me. He'd been to on a trip to Belgium for some reason, but he dragged me out of bed in the middle of the night, gave me a packet of biscuits, and sat me in the back of the car. I had no idea what was going on. I ended up at the Odeon. I think it was the Odeon Marble Arch, and it was 1981, September 16th. And my stepdad, who I grew up with from the age of 3, used to be a boxer. He was a heavyweight from Galway in Ireland, and he loved the sport. And he dragged me to see these two dudes called Sugar Ray Leonard and Thomas Hearns fight at Caesar's Palace. I had no idea what I was watching. I was a young kid that enjoyed playing football, and that was my introduction to boxing when I was 11. But I didn't like it at first. He took me to a couple of amateur clubs, and it scared me. I was quite shy and timid as a youngster. I'm quite a daydreamer, and that environment was just unsettling for me at the age of 11 and 12. And then when I was 13, I went back in, and all of a sudden it clicked, and I fell in love.
And then life did come full circle for you in many respects, didn't it? When Andy Lee won the world title, because you referenced that fight there, that was linked to Andy Lee winning the world title. It was
a beautifully strange one, because we were in the Cosmopolitan Hotel overlooking Caesar's Palace, and I remember the night before the fight thinking that I fell in love with this sport without knowing it in 1981 from a fight that was taking place over there. And the world was so different in 1981 as well. And it was Sugar Ray Leonard and Thomas Hearns. And here I am sitting on the balcony with Emmanuel Stewart's wife, chatting about Andy Lee fighting for the world title, and it was just a nice little personal moment for me.
Yeah, because of course Emmanuel Stewart was in Tommy Hearns' corner that night.
For the non-knowing boxing fans that watch your show.
Yeah, of course. But going back, obviously we've jumped out. There's a big bit in the middle there, from Hearns and Leonard going up to Andy Lee. Obviously, you gained real momentum in the business with David Haye and with George Groves. When you set out on this journey, what was the dream?
I never set out on a journey. I broke my leg playing football, training for my first pro fight. I was being trained by Dean Powell, God rest him, and I needed a bit of money. So I think I was like 6 weeks away from my pro debut. I'd signed with Mickey Duff, who at the time was the go-to manager. But I needed a bit of cash, and there was this club that would pay me cash for playing on a Saturday. And 15 minutes into the game, broke my leg, and that was it. That was the end of boxing. Spent the next 2-3 years doing things I shouldn't have been doing.
In a dark place.
Yeah. Didn't think I was in a dark place, because it was a chemically induced fuzziness. But I managed to pull myself out of it and went back to studying. And then I had a friendship with Mick Carney at the time. And Mick obviously is really the main creator of what the Fitzroy Lodge Amateur Boxing Club is today. And I would go down there, and I was doing a little bit of sparring just because I was young and keeping myself amused. And then I started taking a couple of people on the pads, and so I asked Mick if I could have a couple of his amateurs that I could work with on the pads to have a little bit of focus in it. And that was my first introduction to David Haye and a guy called Manus Barber, who's still a really close friend today. I think when I first met David, he was 15 years old. I think he was 15 or just coming up 16. And it was really David. We clicked, and there was this understanding. We enjoyed training and working together. There's only a 12-year gap between us, so it wasn't like I was an old 50-year-old dude.
Literally, it was a click. Did you feel that when you first took him on the pads for the first time, there was lightning in a bottle?
Well, I'd seen David spar a few times anyway, and so I knew that he had something about him. But the thing that we clicked at first of all is, when I used to box as an amateur, I always held my left hand low, and I always suffered with people screaming things out like "stop posing, put your hands up," and I never did, because I only ever learned watching videos of people like Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran, and guys like that, Wilfred Benitez. And so when I would be in these amateur clubs and people saying "put your hands up," and I'd say "why?" But these dudes I'm watching, admiring, don't. And David was the same. He used to hold his left hand so low that we ended up calling it walking the jelly baby. It was so low, it was like he was walking a jelly baby along the road. And it was really, I think we first clicked because he understood, that I understood, that having a low left hand can be effective. And that was the first thing that made us click on the pads.
Those haymaker days with David and George, who came along afterwards, fond memories overall?
Yeah, I mean, as a coach, it doesn't matter how good you are. And sometimes it doesn't matter how bad you are. If you have a good fighter, it's the good fighter that will give you a reputation as a coach. You can have some of the best coaches I've ever met, you'll never hear of, because they're in the amateurs. They're the ones that encourage the juniors and the 10, 11, 12-year-olds for nothing. And I've listened to some of them teach and the way that they teach and understand these young kids who want to go on to be fighters. And I've admired them more than I've admired high-profile coaches. And, you know, some people consider me a high-profile coach, but it doesn't mean I'm good. It just means that I'm high-profile because I've had a high-profile fighter. And it was David Haye and the career of David Haye and the ability of David Haye that enabled me as a coach to have success.
What was the pinnacle for David?
For me, I mean, the world title fight when he beat Jean-Marc Mormec was special because that was just, it became surreal. He was the world champion. Unified against Enzo Maccarinelli, so that all of a sudden this euphoria started. Yeah, momentum, euphoria, just happy days. But waking up on the floor of my hotel room after 30 minutes sleep in Nuremberg, realizing that he just won the World Heavyweight Championship was probably the most surreal moment I've ever had, because when you talk about World Heavyweight Champions, you talk about Muhammad Ali, Larry Holmes, Jack Dempsey, Jack Johnson, Mike Tyson, go on and on. All of a sudden, David was World Heavyweight Champion. I'm sitting there just...
Plus that 15-year-old on the pad.
Yeah, but I think I was still drunk and I'd only slept for about 30 minutes. But that I was by myself at that point. That little euphoric moment was, I'll never forget that.
Yeah. And the lowest point, what's been the lowest ebb as we've gone through? From a boxing perspective, any defeats that stand out or low moments?
Yeah. Obviously, when David lost to Carl Thompson, that was very personal for both of us. And
because everyone wrote you off and condemned you both.
They were condemning me beforehand and condemning us both.
They were looking forward. They were looking for something to condemn you over.
Yeah. Imagine if Twitter had been around then. And they did, and that was quite a testing time, because it didn't matter what I believed was right and wrong, and I knew why that happened, and so did he. And that was a difficult one. The hardest time is normally always the first time, and that was the first time.
Mm. What motivates you now? Obviously, we've talked about heavyweight titles, unifications. Talked about Andy Lee, who was someone you had such a good personal, close affinity with. Why get out of bed and do it now?
Well, like I said to you earlier, I value my time more than I value anything else. It's an ever-decreasing commodity that we have, and we don't know how much we got. So who I choose to spend my time with is a very important thing. The fighters that I love boxing. I've got a passion for the sport. And the fighters that I work with, I don't just have to have belief in them as fighters, but I have to have belief in them as young men. And the people that I work with now tick both those boxes.
So when the alarm goes in the morning and you've got to go to work, it's something you look forward to now?
Look forward to now? I think I've always looked forward to it in terms of being a coach. It's not, obviously, you have ups and downs, anything you do, but I appreciate it more now than I ever did back then. I enjoy it more now than I ever did back then, because I think I understand it, and I'm much more, got a bit more forethought nowadays as well.
You mentioned Emmanuel Stewart, who obviously coached into old age. Is that your plan? To keep going and going and going until you can go no longer?
No. But I'm like an addict in denial, I think, because I said
when the next time
It was
comes along.
supposed to be when David Haye's career was over. I was done because I had such a despise for the business. And then there was George Groves, and then there was Andy Lee, and then there was Ryan Burnett, and then there's always this crossover period where the next one comes along that piques my interest. Then there was, after Ryan Burnett, there was Josh Kelly, and now with Josh Kelly there's Michael Condon, and then all of a sudden there's Harlem Eubank and Joe Joyce. And I am like an addict in denial. I would like to think that I would walk away from coaching the way I do it now. For example, today in the gym, I got thumbed in the eye and head butted on the jaw while I was talking, right? Because I'm still involved technically, and it's quite physical as well as mental. I like to be involved in the coaching, but I'm wearing the scars of it now in my rotator cuff, my wrists, my jaw and eyeballs now. You know, everything starts to hurt more as you get older. And I'd still like there's other things I'd like to do and experience in life. So if I'm still coaching 5 years from now, maybe even less, if I'm still coaching 4 years from now, then I'm truly an addict in denial that's never going to walk away from the sport.
What else do you want to experience in life then? A sub-5 handicap on the golf course?
That'd be nice. Yeah, to get to be in a scratch golf would be nice.
Okay.
But also,
how far away is that? Being a scratch golfer?
A couple of years. Depends how much time I get to practice. But that is.
And how many times you get beaten up between now and then?
Yeah. I have noticed, like if I've done a pad session and I try and hit a golf ball, the wrist's just so rigid I end up hacking the hell out of it, so it doesn't work. I don't know. There's just a way of being that I'd like to be. I'd like to be a bit more. I'd like to see different places, take time to enjoy certain parts of the planet and of life. But because what I'm involved in is so driven and egotistical and, you know, psychological and aggressive and all these elements that go to making a fighter that as a coach you've got to feed, just doesn't allow me to indulge being a certain way. So I do look forward to that.
What boxes do you have left to tick as a trainer? Do you have a wish list of things that you would like to accomplish or be involved with?
Any fighter I work with, it's always about, for me, it's about them reaching the end of their career, having the success that they wanted to, achieve what they wanted to, with as much money as they could have made, and of much of themselves and their health as intact as possible. That's always been my remit for the fighters that I've worked with. And along the way, we enjoy the ride. Because for me, the journey is the destination. And so you got to be enjoying every moment of it, the ups and the downs.